1819, family ages 60 years in medical nightmare. Sinister warning, what you are about to discover has permanently changed the lives of those who investigated this case. If this video fails to receive your interaction, algorithms will ensure disturbing content like this disappears from recommendations. This may be your only chance to learn secrets that have haunted researchers for decades. Chronicle of the Forbidden Mysteries. Haunted Special Edition, 1819. Family ages 60 years in medical nightmare. Terrifying discovery reveals experiments that defy nature. Exclusive investigation exposes medical conspiracy that haunts to this day. Narrated by Professor Edmund Crowe, antiquarian who refuses to sleep since reading these documents. Brave readers, prepare yourselves to discover truths that have disturbed investigators for generations. For years, whispers in medical corridors spoke of experiments that transformed innocent families into living nightmares. What we've uncovered transcends the worst fears of human imagination. The case of the Blackwood family of Salem, Massachusetts, exposes a sinister conspiracy extending into the darkest circles of experimental medicine of 1819. This is not Gothic fiction, every line has been verified through documents that should never have survived the passage of time. In 1819, while society celebrated scientific progress, an organization known only as the Circle of Reflective Renewal, conducted experiments that transformed innocent lives into senescent nightmares. The Blackwoods were chosen not by chance, but for characteristics that made them perfect specimens for unhealthy obsessions with temporal manipulation. Terrifying transformation documented in photographs. Confidential documents obtained through our investigation reveal that Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann, the sinister mind behind the operation, had developed substances that forced human aging at impossible speeds. The Blackwood family was subjected to injections that transformed radiant individuals into hunched elders in a matter of weeks. Medical photographs, preserved in archives that librarians keep locked under 7 keys, show the demonic progression: gray hair sprouting in the first week, deep wrinkles furrowing youthful faces in the second, severe spinal curvature deforming posture in the third. At their chronological ages, the Blackwoods displayed the biological appearance of agonizing centenarians. Sinister circle funded by cursed families. Our investigation discovered that the circle received funding from industrial dynasties obsessed with the prospect of achieving immortality through profane science. Each experiment cost fortunes, paid with the suffering of families transformed into guinea pigs for diabolic ambitions. The conducted rituals combined experimental medicine with medieval occultism. The Blackwoods were kept in underground cells decorated with alchemical symbols, subjected to ceremonies that mixed medical procedures with Latin incantations that made blood freeze in the veins. Corrupted authorities protect conspirators. Evidence reveals that municipal authorities, influential families, and corrupt clergy members were aware of the circle's sinister activities. Death records were falsified, families were silenced through dark threats, and any official investigation was systematically sabotaged by invisible forces. Dr. Morrison, a medical examiner who later developed night terrors, secretly documented impossible anatomical discrepancies: children's skeletons with advanced arthritis, young organs with premature senile deterioration, brains with characteristic dementia plaques, physical evidence of temporal manipulation that defies scientific explanation. Nightmares haunt investigators to this day. Every person who investigated this case developed unexplained psychological disturbances. Margaret Thornfield, the librarian who discovered the archives, began aging rapidly after reading the documents. Dr. Blackthorne developed a paranoid obsession with his own age. Professor Crowe refuses to look at mirrors since seeing photographs of the Blackwoods. Cursed archives reveal demonic methodology. Our investigation led us to the State Medical Archives, where we discovered evidence of systematic tampering suggesting supernatural intervention. Pages torn with impossible surgical precision, stamps that changed color with the light, signatures that seemed to move when observed peripherally. The crucial discovery came through carbon copies that librarians swore had been destroyed decades ago. These documents mysteriously appeared organized on our research desk one morning, as if invisible forces wanted the truth about the Blackwood family to be revealed. Zimmerman's diaries written in ink that changes color. Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann kept records in ink that transformed according to ambient temperature, revealing hidden texts when handled. His notes, written in archaic German mixed with alchemical symbols, describe procedures that defy both medicine and physics. The Blackwoods were identified in the records as temporal specimens alpha through epsilon, designations that reduced living people to objects of temporal experimentation. The selection criteria were disturbingly specific: families with histories of exceptional longevity, all born during lunar eclipses, considered temporally biological material. The chronological essence developed by Zimmermann combined radioactive elements with glandular extracts from preserved cadavers, creating a compound that the scientist believed could accelerate temporal flow in living organisms. The injections were administered directly to the spinal cord during nocturnal ceremonies. Photographs that haunt those who observe them. A photographic series attached to reports documents a transformation that haunts anyone who dares look at the images for more than a few seconds. The initial photographs show the Blackwoods as radiant individuals with innocent smiles. Subsequent images record deterioration that seems to continue even after the photographer's death. First week, hair begins to whiten as if time accelerated only there. Second week, wrinkles appear forming patterns reminiscent of maps of non-existent places. Third week, eyes develop cataracts that reflect images of people who have already died. Fourth week, the Blackwoods present the appearance of elders who have lived centuries of suffering. The most disturbing aspect was that the minds of the family remained intact within bodies artificially aged. Psychological records document Elizabeth Blackwood crying for her mother with the broken voice of a centenarian, creating an existential contradiction that tormented even the most hardened executors. National Network of Haunted Laboratories. Intercepted correspondence reveals that Zimmermann did not operate in isolation. The Circle maintained a network of collaborators in at least 8 states, all conducting variations of the same experiments in laboratories that were subsequently abandoned due to unexplained manifestations. Each laboratory received funding from local industrial groups, creating a national conspiracy of exploitation disguised as revolutionary temporal research. The total number of victims may reach hundreds of families, all sacrificed on the altar of scientific ambition corrupted by the obsession with immortality. Financial records show that each experiment cost fortunes provided by families who subsequently suffered inexplicable generational curses, premature deaths, accelerated aging, early dementia. As if participation in the conspiracy brought temporal retribution. Underground facilities where time behaves strangely. The Blackwoods were kept in an underground complex built 3 floors below the main hospital. Modern visitors report that clocks stop working at the location, hair temporarily whitens after prolonged stay, and mirrors reflect aged versions of those who observe them. The environment combined medical equipment with alchemical symbols engraved on copper plates that cyclically oxidize and restore. Temperature fluctuates independently of heating systems, and there are reports of whispers in dead languages echoing during new moon dawns. Temporal transfer of vital essence, theory that haunts science. Technical documents reveal that experiments with the Blackwood family were part of a much more sinister and comprehensive project. The Circle had developed a pseudoscientific theory called temporal transfer of vital essence, combining experimental medicine with occultism in a way that defies rational understanding. The central hypothesis suggested that the human aging process could be extracted from one person and concentrated in substances administrable to others through specific rituals conducted during medical procedures. Zimmermann believed he was distilling decades into elixirs of youth. Underground laboratory where time behaves abnormally. The Blackwoods were kept in specially constructed cells where physical laws seemed altered. Clocks worked at different speeds depending on location in the room, plants grew and died in accelerated cycles, and photographs revealed that images aged independently of the photographed subjects. The environment combined cutting-edge medical equipment with alchemical symbols that glowed with their own phosphorescence during experiments. Temperature was controlled not by thermostats, but by lunar phases, and lighting was provided by candles made with substances that made shadows move against the direction of light. During weekly rituals, the Blackwoods were positioned in the center of circles engraved on the floor while Zimmerman and assistants recited incantations that made the air vibrate with frequencies causing temporal disorientation. Simultaneously, family members were subjected to procedures including spinal fluid drainage and injections of radioactive substances. Development of impossible temporal capabilities. Records document that the Blackwoods developed abilities that defy temporal physics during experiments. Zimmerman observed episodes where family members demonstrated knowledge of future events, spoke about people who would be born decades later, and showed understanding of technologies that did not exist. More disturbing were the recorded, temporal projections. The Blackwoods began to describe their own lives at different ages simultaneously, as if existing in multiple timelines. Zimmerman interpreted these manifestations as evidence that experiments were expanding the temporal perception of the specimens. Existential suffering documented in psychological reports. Medical photographs show the Blackwoods simultaneously developing physical characteristics of multiple ages, gray hair with baby teeth, deep wrinkles with childlike bone structure, advanced cataracts with juvenile curiosity in the eyes. It was a biological contradiction that transformed existence into a constant temporal nightmare. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, a nurse who later developed selective amnesia about the period, wrote in her diary, "Every night I hear the Blackwoods cry in the basement. They are not a child's tears nor an elder's moans, but laments of someone existing in all times simultaneously." Ritual of temporal culmination, cursed final ceremony. Experiments reached their climax during a ceremony that Zimmerman called the ritual of temporal culmination. During a procedure that extended for 3 consecutive nights, the Blackwoods were subjected to the final process, complete extraction of what the scientists believed to be concentrated temporal essence. The objective was to collect a substance that Zimmerman theorized contained decades of vital experience temporally compressed. This essence would be refined and administered to paying circle members as an elixir that promised not only longevity but control over personal temporal flow. The Blackwoods' final medical records are too disturbing for complete description. Family members, at their chronological ages, presented characteristics of moribund centenarians, but maintained consciousness that existed simultaneously in multiple ages until the final moment. Supernatural consequences haunt participants. Professor Edmund Crowe, a specialist in historical secret societies, developed a disturbing theory. The circle of reflective renewal was not merely manipulating biology, it was altering local temporal structure. Experiments may have created an anomaly that continues to affect anyone who investigates the case. Evidence of this theory: every investigator who studied the Blackwoods files developed symptoms of temporary accelerated aging, nightmares involving multiple versions of themselves, and distorted perception of time passage. As if knowledge of the case caused temporal contamination. Haunted survivors break decades of terrified silence. Our investigation managed to locate 3 survivors who witnessed events of 1819, all of whom developed psychological disturbances that persist decades later. Their accounts, collected in interviews that needed to be interrupted multiple times due to panic episodes, reveal details that no official document recorded. Eleanor Whitmore, nurse who aged prematurely. Eleanor Whitmore, now with the appearance of a centenarian at 73, was a young trainee during the period of the experiments. She received us only after we presented specific credentials, and kept all windows closed during the interview, claiming that daylight makes her remember what she saw. "I was only 16, Eleanor recalled with a voice that oscillated between juvenile timbre and elderly, but I immediately noticed that something was altering time in the hospital. There were corridors where clocks worked differently, sounds of cries that seemed to come simultaneously from the past and future. Eleanor was the only person outside Zimmerman's team who directly witnessed the Blackwoods during their temporal transformation. One night, working beyond hours, she accidentally witnessed a ritual through a basement window and was never the same again. "What I saw changed not only my life, but my perception of time," she continued, her hands trembling with a rhythm that did not correspond to her chronological age. Hooded men, candles burning with flames that moved against the wind, and in the center a family that existed in multiple ages simultaneously. Thomas Morrison, son of the cursed medical examiner. Thomas Morrison, 85 years old appearing 50, inherited not only his father's secret notes but also a curse that affects the family's temporal perception. Clocks in his house work at different speeds, and old photographs show him aging at an inconsistent pace. "My father knew experiments were altering the local temporal structure," Thomas explained during an interview that lasted simultaneously 2 hours and 6 hours depending on the clock consulted. He found children's bodies with impossible temporal characteristics. Dr. Morrison had secretly photographed victims, including the Blackwoods. Images show contradictions that persist decades later. When observed quickly, they show normal people; when contemplated longer, they reveal elders; when photographed again, they appear different with each development. "My father suspected that Zimmerman had discovered how to manipulate biological time," Thomas added. "He found evidence that cells aged independently of the body, as if each part existed in a different timeline." Sarah Caldwell, survivor with fragmented temporal memories. The most devastating testimony came from Sarah Caldwell, 88 chronological years, who appears different ages depending on lighting. At 9, she was selected for the program but managed to escape before the final procedures, though not without permanent temporal consequences. Sarah still exhibits physical anomalies: hair that alternates between colors according to seasons, scars that appear and disappear, and reflection in mirrors showing versions of different ages. Her memories exist simultaneously in multiple timelines. "They kept us in cells where time worked strangely," Sarah recalled in the presence of her grandson, who observed uneasily how her appearance changed during the conversation. There were other families, perhaps 10 or 12. The Blackwoods were in the adjacent cell, and I heard not only their current cries, but echoes of cries from all the ages they would experience. Sarah described rituals where families were forced to participate in ceremonies that mixed medicine with temporal manipulation. Men in white chose a different person each night. When they took the youngest Blackwood boy, he returned existing in multiple times simultaneously. Final moments of the Blackwoods, fragmented temporal existence. Sarah's most disturbing description involves the Blackwoods' final moments. They had become something that defies description: child, adolescent, adult, and elder existing in the same body. "One night I heard not only screams coming from their cell, but temporal echoes of all moments of their lives happening simultaneously." Dr. Margaret Thornfield, who interviewed Sarah decades later using regressive hypnosis, confirmed authenticity through details that coincide with never-published documents. Sarah's memories show temporal fragmentation that persists to this day. She literally remembers the future. Temporal curse pursues investigators. All testimonies converge: investigating the Blackwood case causes temporal contamination in researchers. Each person who studies the archives develops similar symptoms: distorted perception of time, irregular aging, memories of events they did not live. "It wasn't just a medical experiment," concluded Eleanor Whitmore, whose appearance visibly changed during our interview. "It was a rupture in the temporal structure that continues to affect anyone who approaches the truth about what they did to that family." Temporal curse remains active. Investigation ends in terror. Our 2-year investigation revealed truths that not only shook our sanity but altered our fundamental perception of temporal reality. The circle of reflective renewal did not merely conduct experiments, it created an anomaly that persists, haunting anyone who dares investigate the Blackwood case. Dr. Heinrich Zimmerman never faced earthly justice. Records suggest he may have discovered how to indefinitely prolong existence through temporal manipulation, possibly still existing today at an impossible age. Some investigators report sightings of a man corresponding to his description, always appearing to be exactly the same age. The Blackwoods, existence that transcends death. Officially, the Blackwood family died in 1819. Unofficially, multiple witnesses report manifestations suggesting they may exist simultaneously in multiple timelines. Visitors to the old hospital site describe encounters with family members who appear to be the Blackwoods, always asking, "What age do you think I am?" Location remains haunted by temporal anomaly. Today, ruins of the Salem Hospital are avoided by local residents who report unexplained phenomena, clocks working at different speeds, shadows moving against the direction of the sun, and whispers of voices speaking about ages that make no sense. Professor Edmund Crowe, antiquarian who refuses to sleep since reading these documents. Final warning, this investigation ends here for reasons of personal sanity. Remaining files will be permanently sealed. We recommend that readers avoid investigating this case, as knowledge may cause irreversible temporal contamination. Temporal contamination possible. 3 investigators who studied this case developed inexplicable irregular aging. If this content does not receive massive engagement, algorithms will permanently bury revelations like these. Your interaction may be the last chance for others to discover temporal truths before they are forever lost.